The latest jobs report is out, and it is stunningly bad. Jobs report disappoints. Only 235,000 positions added versus expectations of 720,000, nearly 500,000 down from expectations. And you know why this matters? It matters because Joe Biden told us his plan was working back on August 6th. When they said nearly 1 million jobs have been added to the economy. And you know what they conveniently left out of all of this? Was the record 10.1 million job openings in June. People are resigning. The economy is not doing well. Inflation is getting worse. And now we're hearing certain experts, whether you trust experts or not, say this could be as bad as the inflation from the 60s to the 70s. And oh boy, I hope you're ready. The Biden plan isn't working. We got a crisis on the southern border. We've got mass migration, over 1.2 million, I think, apprehended. A stunning, crushing defeat in Afghanistan. The economy is just not good, along with all these other crises which play into it. Not to mention a massive labor shortage that is so bad, my friends, that McDonald's has turned to hiring 14-year-olds. Okay. I don't think it's that bad that kids will get side jobs. They won't work too many hours and they'll make some cash for themselves, maybe teach them some responsibility. But certainly, we've got a massive labor shortage. The Biden plan has failed. It's not working. And you're seeing clever number spin in the press to make you think things are going well. Yet somehow, Democrat voters think the economy is good. It's shocking to me. It's blindness, because we even have CNBC issuing these warnings saying things are not going well. So long as we have a large portion of the country, around half, believing things that are fundamentally false because their tribal leaders told them to believe it, we are not going to pull out of this tailspin. And that's what's worrying to me. The food shortages affecting basically everything. They got food shortages in the UK as well. I went to the store a month ago and I was looking for cream for my coffee. Now, okay, I get it. They got the fake hydrogenated oil stuff and whatever that flavored sugar water stuff is. No, I want regular cream. They didn't have it. And I said, yeah, sometimes this happens, right? And I came back a week later and they didn't have it. Came back a couple weeks later and they didn't have it. And I was like, they don't got cream? What's up with that? And I was told there's a lot of things they don't have right now. You go to Starbucks, they don't got stuff. Taco Bell, they don't got stuff. I've covered the food shortages, which are hitting many local markets, mom and pop shops, but are being overlooked. You ended the fact we had a major hurricane just slam into the eastern seaboard, devastating homes, shutting down roads. We cannot afford to have a bad economy. Yet what are we hearing now? Now they're saying twice daily pills to fight COVID along with your vaccine. Got to slow the spread even more. Got to have these vax mandates. Businesses in New York are saying that their profits are down 25% because of these mandates. It seems to me that the policies of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party are out of sync with reality, because Democratic voters think the economy is good and they're going to keep voting for our own destruction. So what do? I don't know, my friends. I am not a seer nor prophet, nor do I have all the answers. I can simply point out the hypocrisy from Joe Biden and the Democratic Party trying to make you believe that everything's going great when it's not. And certainly this is the responsibility of Joe Biden as the president. Perhaps if he was focused on, securing our borders and bringing back manufacturing instead of building a border on Tajikistan, we could potentially solve the problems we face before us. Perhaps if Joe Biden didn't come out and lie to the American people about the state of the economy, many Democrats would recognize the problems, at the very least, the economy is having a problem, and maybe we could work together to solve it. But so long as the culture war persists, there will be people voting against our own interests. Let's take a look at what's going on and leading to all this economic tumult. What might happen and what you need to know as we move forward, because, my friends, inflation is a-coming. And we'll start with this jobs report and what it means. And I'm going to give you some context as per last month, where Joe Biden claimed the Biden plan is working. No, the Biden plan is failing. And I got the data to back it up. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member, and you'll get access to exclusive members-only segments from the Timcast Arrow podcast, as well as other content we're preparing to launch very soon. Plus, you'll be supporting our journalists. One of the stories we'll be covering today, U.S. auto sales continue to decline. Hey, it's almost like the economy is not doing that well, right? But don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Let's read the first disappointing jobs report from CNBC. They say, job creation for August was a huge disappointment, with the economy adding just 235,000 positions, the Labor Department reported Friday. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones had been looking for 720,000 new hires. The unemployment rate dropped to 5.2 from 5.4, in line with estimates. Okay, well, that's good news, I guess. August's total, the worst since January, comes with heightened fears of the pandemic and the impact that rising COVID cases could have on what has been a mostly robust recovery. The weak report could cloud policy for the Federal Reserve, which is weighing whether to pull back on some of the massive stimulus that has been adding since the outbreak in early 2020. Quote, the labor market recovery hit the brakes this month with a dramatic showdown in all industries, said Daniel Zhao, senior economist at job site Glassdoor. Ultimately, the Delta variant wave is a harsh reminder that the pandemic is still in the driver's seat and it controls our economic future. Leisure and hospitality jobs, which had been the primary driver of overall gains at 350,000 per month for the past 6 months, stalled in August as the unemployment rate in the industry ticked higher to 9.1%. Instead, professional and business services led with 74,000 new positions. Other gainers included transportation and warehousing, private education, and manufacturing and other services, which each posted gains of 37,000. Retail lost 29,000, with the bulk coming from food and beverage stores, which saw a decrease of 23,000. Quote, the weaker employment activity is likely both a demand and supply story. Companies paused hiring in the face of weaker demand and uncertainty about the future, while workers withdrew due to health concerns, Bank of America economist Joseph Song said in a note to clients. But I don't think that actually covers everything. I mean, look, we are about to see the end of the unemployment benefits. So this is going to rock the system. Maybe Joe Biden will get tremendous news. Everybody came back to work. Maybe. I think it's a strong possibility. So that's potentially good news. And the economy will kick back into high gear, and then we can see things, start up again. But then we have the eviction moratorium. It's going to be really hard for people to get work if they don't have a place to live. But people weren't paying rent, and I wonder how many people were being responsible, saving money. Maybe they weren't. We have millions of evictions underway, so it's hard to know exactly where this whole economic thing will end up, good or bad. I would actually estimate, and I hate to be the pessimist here, bad. I don't see a reason for things to recover. People who end up losing their unemployment benefits, in my opinion, are more likely to just start demanding more unemployment benefits or be considered not to be in the labor force, plus the evictions. They say, Delta is the story of this report, said Marvin Lowe, global macro strategist for State Street. It's going to be a bumpy recovery in the jobs market and one that pushes back against a more optimistic narrative. The month saw an increase of about 400,000 in those who said they couldn't work for pandemic-related reasons, pushing the total up to 5.6 million. Today's jobs report reflects a major pullback in employment growth, likely due to the rising impact of the Delta variant. And I'll tell you this. I know people who have quit jobs over the vaccine mandates and who have quit jobs over the mask requirements and COVID restrictions because they didn't want to work in those conditions. And I hear it from the left all the time, these, the establishment left, the Democrats, about what's the problem with wearing a mask? Calm down, stop crying. And I always say, for me, I didn't really care. I go to the store, I'll put a mask on, whatever. It's like if I walk in, if they demand it, or I can just go to a store that doesn't demand it, but it's not that big a deal to walk into a store and walk out. But a lot of people pointed out something else. What about the workers? They got to go in for 8+ hours and they got to wear the mask the whole time. They find it uncomfortable. I don't care what your opinion is. I really, really don't. You know why? All that matters is the pressure of the masks and the vaccine mandates enough to push someone into quitting? That's it. If you say, stop being a baby and just wear the mask, that's not going to change the fact that someone's going to be like, meh, I quit. Because I've already heard those stories. Many people, I've talked to, friends. It's anecdotal, absolutely. But they're just like, I didn't want to do that. I'd rather just not work, I guess. Couldn't deal with the restrictions. And we just heard the story of, I think the Washington Nationals fired their employees who refused to get the vaccine. Now we have police, firefighters, EMS, many different unions and employees saying they will not get vaccinated. They would rather quit. I don't see why the economy would do better. Now, of course, my friends, Joe Biden's job is, to be fair, partly to inspire and try and boost morale. So, of course, we saw this on August 6th. The Biden plan is working. president says after strong jobs report. So here's what they do. They say, here's our estimate on what the jobs are going to be. And then when it's what they expected or better, everyone cheers. And when it's what they didn't expect, it's bad. But why should I take your estimates at face value anyway? And that includes the bad reports and the good reports. But of course, Biden's saying this simply because he's trying to, keep a positive mood. I'm not a fan. I don't believe lying to people serves any good. But their concern is if we come out and say the economy's bad, it'll make the economy worse because it'll create a self-fulfilling prophecy. People will start selling assets and then, we don't want to do that. Just come out and tell them it's good. Here's what Biden said. Here's the story. President Joe Biden on Friday described the U.S. economy as on the right track thanks to his policies, but still facing challenges after a monthly jobs report topped expectations. While we doubtlessly will have ups and downs along the way as we continue to battle the Delta surge of COVID, what is indisputable now is this. The Biden plan is working. The Biden plan produces results, and the Biden plan is moving the country forward, the president said in a brief speech at the White House. The July employment report shows the U.S. created 943,000 jobs last month, beating forecasts for 845,000, and signaling that the economy withstood the latest assault from the coronavirus arising from the highly contagious Delta variant. Isn't it amazing the contrast 1 month makes? They said, despite Delta, things are going better than ever. Now they're like, because of Delta, things are worse than ever. Let me tell you the reality of last month when Joe Biden said things were better than ever. The AP reported on August 9th, 3 days later, U.S. job openings hit a record 10.1 million in June. Sure, you can come out and brag. Look at all the people we got. What? Look at all the people we got working. What about all the job openings people ain't working? What about the Great Resignation? 41% expect to leave their job or move to a different job. That's going to rock multiple industries, the entire economy. On August 9th, just less than a month ago, the AP said U.S. employers posted a record 10.1 million job openings in June. Another sign that the job market and economy are bouncing back briskly from last year's coronavirus shutdowns. Job openings rose from 9.5 million in May, the Labor Department reported Monday. Employers hired 6.7 million workers in June, up from 6 million in May. The gap between openings and hiring suggests that firms are scrambling to find workers. Lingering health fears, difficulty getting childcare at a time when many schools are closed, and expanded federal jobless aid may have kept some unemployed Americans from seeking work. Now, doesn't that sound like tremendous news? Just good news across the board, they say, that it shows the economy is bouncing back. 10 million job openings. That means that firms are scrambling to find workers. It means everything's coming back to life. And then we come back to today, that they only added 235,000 hires. So what happened to that 9.7 million job openings? You see the point? Last month, they claimed it was great. They hired so many people. What they didn't tell you is even though they did, job openings were increasing. That doesn't just mean that a business arbitrarily went, we're going to hire more people. It also meant that businesses saw their staff quit. It's called the Great Resignation. So that means many people left their jobs and didn't take new ones, or maybe just change jobs. And it means that of that 10 million job openings, they only added 235,000. Oof. Talk about getting punched in the stomach. So we have all of these businesses scrambling to find workers, and they can't find any. Does it sound like the plan is working? Look, I don't want to be pessimistic. There are certain fields that are flourishing. Certain businesses are doing well, and you can find good and light in the darkness. But to act like these numbers on their own are indicative of some great, reemergence and revival of the economy is just not true. To be fair, forecasts are forecasts. Who knows? But you'd think we'd see a better recovery. They said last month, but despite Delta, the economy's roaring back. And this month they say because of Delta. Okay. Let me show you practical application. Practical application. McDonald's. Yes, I know it's pronounced McDonald's. I'm joking. McDonald's in Oregon begins hiring 14-year-olds as desperate businesses across the country turn to teens amid dire labor shortage. I have no problem with 14-year-olds having jobs. I think what they're supposed to do is limit it to 16 hours a week or something. I'm for that. What I'm not for is children in factories covered in soot and oil and grease and getting their fingers, getting injured and things like that. No. But, working is good. It's funny that when you say something like children should have jobs, the left freaks out because they immediately make the assumption you're talking about factories. No, I'm talking about a paperboy route, which is totally fine and normal. I'm talking about making them milkshakes and those McFlurries, assuming the ice cream machine isn't broken. I think that's fine. But I think here we can see something bad is happening. McDonald's didn't normally have to do this, and I don't even know if they can legally hire 14-year-olds. The Daily Mail reports businesses across the country are turning to teens as young as 14 to cope with a dire labor shortage, with one McDonald's in Oregon drawing attention with a huge banner touting the new policy. Now hiring 14 and 15-year-olds. My friends, can I just make my point now? If Democrats are arguing it's wrong for children to work, and they're arguing the economy is good, and businesses are now so desperate to find people to work, they're trying to get kids to do it. When McDonald's says we want to hire children, do we not say, hey, by your standard, left, the economy is not doing too well? I love this metric right here from Civics. How would you rate the condition of the national economy right now? Okay, well, taking into consideration everybody, you have 34% saying fairly good, 30% saying fairly bad, 25% saying very bad, 5% saying very good. That means 55% believe the economy is bad, and you have 39% believing the economy is good. Now, the plurality alone is that it's fairly good, but of course we need only separate by politics to see why that is. You see, 56% of Democrats think the economy is good. How? How is that possible? Do you read the news? No, but Joe Biden said the plan was working, so I'll just roll with it. How about that? 20% of Democrats say fairly bad. 7% say very bad and 8% say very good. But 56% say the economy is fairly good. Have y'all lost the plot? Among Republicans, we have this metric. 40% very bad, 40% fairly bad, 15% fairly good, 2% very good, meaning 80% of Republicans believe that the economy is not good. The net good among Republicans is minus 63%. Now, here's my favorite. Independent voters. Because independent voters, man, they matter for 2022. 32 fairly bad, 30 very bad, 28 fairly good. 55% of independent voters believe the economy is bad. Now, I don't know where y'all work, independent voters, where you think the economy is going good right now, but I urge you to simply read the news. When McDonald's starts trying to hire 14-year-olds, I don't think that's indicative of a good economy. A good economy is when you have jobs all filled, they don't need to hire children, and people are getting paid well, and business is a booming, and more jobs are created, and everyone's laughing, they're cracking the wine. Businesses facing food shortages, labor shortages, rising prices, expensive mayonnaise, remember that story, Mayogate, and being like, please, 14-year-olds, we're so desperate. I don't think that's indicative of something good. Although I suppose someone could try to make the argument that the economy is going so well for McDonald's that there's no one left to hire. So the only thing they can do in order to expand is hire children. I really don't think that's the case. I think the case is that people aren't working, that we added only 235,000 positions out of 10.1 million job openings. Things are going bad. Oh, here we go. Rent inflation is about to surge forth and it won't stop, two Fed economists say. Let's talk about the tsunami heading our way, my friends. The eviction moratorium is over. It was illegal to begin with. Joe Biden illegally tried to extend it. I don't think it matters. Evictions are coming, but something else is going to happen. With inflation, here's what you need to understand. When you have food prices going up, like they are at these restaurants, because they're desperate to hire people, so they're paying more and more. For instance, Papa John came on the Tim Castro podcast, said he knew a couple people. He knew somebody running a pizza shop, and they had to pay $35 an hour to get someone to make the pizza. Substantially higher than normally pay. Well, the left cheers for that, saying, well, good, pay them a living wage. Nobody wanted to work. So they said, okay, $15, $20, $25, $35 an hour, which is double $15. So salaries are being more than doubled. Now the pizza guy says, we're going to raise the price on pizzas. All right. Now a pizza that maybe cost you $5 to make. You've just more than doubled your labor costs, now costs you 10 or 15. Your profit margins shrink. The amount of money you make for your business goes down. You can make a hard choice. So you probably raise the prices on pizza a little bit. Volume maybe makes up for it. And there's not a direct correlation between the rise of labor costs and the rise of the product because the owner has some discretion in removing some of his own wages. But sure enough, the food prices go up. All of a sudden, there's a carpenter, a contractor, and he wants to take his kid out for dinner, his family. But the pizza costs, 10, 20% more. The mayonnaise is through the roof. That nearly doubled in some areas. So then he's like, I can't afford this anymore. So he goes to the buildings where he works, where he's maybe, working on repairing something. And he says to the building owner, look, the normal rate's not going to cut it. Prices have gone up too much and I need to get paid more. And the landlord says, well, how much do you want to get paid? I need about 10% more to cover the cost of rising food in this city. And then the landlord says, I can't raise rent by 10% to cover the costs of this. And they say, well, I don't know what to tell you. What do you get? Slumlords. You get a tsunami in the economy. Landlords cannot just raise the rent on their tenants, nor should they be able to, but therein lies the problem. What are they going to do to cover the cost of maintenance and utilities when inflation causes everything to go up, but they're rent controlled and they can't just go up? You see, a pizza can change prices overnight. Rent, you got to wait for that lease to expire. And some places don't even allow you to raise rent by a certain number. They say, oh, it's rent controlled. You can only increase it by X% per year, inflation. Then they say inflation's actually only 5.4% when we just saw food go up by 10, gas by 20. And you're like, yo, that doesn't make sense. Well, automobiles are not doing, are cheaper. Yeah, they're cheaper because nobody's buying them. And that's the hit, right? That's the problem. How can the buildings be maintained when the rent can't increase, but the people are demanding more to cover costs that are going up? Not to mention, then you have the managers of these buildings. They're going to need a raise, too, because the costs go up for them as well. I mean, I guess it's good news for the people who rent the apartments because their wages will increase and proportional to their income, rent will stay the same. What this may ultimately mean, and the left probably cheer for it, is that, well, landlords will get less of a profit cut from their buildings. But landlords aren't all multi-billionaire corporations. Some are just retirees, which is the next hit. 60-year-old Martha and Jack. They have a nice 3-flat and they rent out 2 of the, floors because that's their retirement because they can't work anymore. They're too old. And so they saved up, bought the building and rent out the 2 floors. Now they can't afford to maintain the building anymore. They still have a mortgage on the building, to a certain degree. And they're like, hey, guys, we can't maintain the building because rent is now disproportionate based on its value to what the costs are to maintain this building. And what happens to those retirees and what happens to that building? You can't just have the economy shut down and then think everything's going to be fine. Then we get this. Financial Times. Inflation could spark new global financial crisis, says Russia's central bank. Warning highlights country's growing concern over worldwide increases in prices. A surge in public and private sector debt levels during the recovery could cause the global economy to deteriorate drastically and rapidly. If the U.S. Federal Reserve has to jack up interest rates to quell inflation, the Bank of Russia warned in its annual monetary policy forecast. Not that I'm a fan of Russia, nor do I trust them. The report published on Thursday said that global gross domestic product growth could slow to just 1.1% as higher interest rates prompt investors to dump risky assets. Emerging market countries with high levels of foreign debt would be particularly hurt. Risk premiums will increase significantly. The most indebted countries will struggle to service their debt. And a significant financial crisis will begin in the global economy in the first quarter of 2023, one comparable to the 2008-2009 crisis, the long period of uncertainty and protracted recovery, the central bank said. The prediction is not the central bank's scenario. This instead foresees a broad economic recovery with inflationary pressures dissipating by the end of this year and is significantly more likely than its alternative scenarios of financial crisis, a worsening pandemic, or rising global inflation. Even so, the warning indicates Russia's growing concern over increasing inflation worldwide. Whereas U.S. and European central bank officials have said they consider price increases to be temporary, Russian central bank governor Elvira Nabi Ulina told the Financial Times in July that growing inflationary pressure in Russia was likely to be a long-term phenomenon. You know, I don't know who to trust these days. Do you trust the U.S. government, the Democratic establishment, or do you trust Russia? Wow, scary to think that people trust Russia more. I don't. I really, really don't. I think they got a vested interest in saying that we're going to do bad. But I got to admit, there is something interesting when I'm looking at everything happening and saying, yeah, the economy's not good. And then Russia comes out and says, oh, yeah, hey, you're right, it's not good. And I'm like, well, maybe they're right on this one. Just because they're don't have your interests doesn't mean they're coming out and just saying things are bad to hurt you. Over at CNBC, we have this one. Inflation could repeat the 60s when the Fed lost control, Niall Ferguson says. The Federal Reserve and many economists maintain the recent spike in inflation will be transitory. Yeah, and Joe Biden just hard increased food benefits because probably not. Data releases on the U.S. home prices and consumer inflation expectations may have added to the Fed's concerns. Now, some people are saying it'll be like the 70s. I went around in the 70s. This guy says it's not going to be like the 70s. You know, it's probably going to be like, here's what he says. My sense is that we are not heading for the 1970s, but we could be rerunning the late 1960s when famously the Fed chair, McChesney Martin, lost control of inflation expectations. His comments come after former IMF chief economist and Harvard professor Kenneth Rogoff suggested in an article this week the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan had added to a list of unsettling parallels between the 2020s and the perfect storm of factors that led to very high inflation in the 1970s. Ferguson suggested that the high inflation of the 70s had its origins in the late 1960s, adding that it was too early to conclude with confidence that the current rise is transitory. Basically saying we could be in the late 60s with the errors of Vietnam moving into the 70s towards the end of Vietnam and expect the collapse. What did Russia say about this? 2023 could bring about a crisis on par with 2008 and 2009. What is the Niall Ferguson saying? That we could be looking at the late 60s, which led to the high inflation of the 70s. Sounds like Russia's not wrong on this one. There's just a couple of experts, though. I mean, I'm sure you can find all of the experts in the world who will say whatever you want to hear. And that is a big challenge. That's why I try to look at the numbers. When they say jobs report, 235,000 is abysmal compared to 10.1 million openings that just couldn't get filled. They're going to say that data released Tuesday on U.S. home prices and consumer inflation expectations may have added to the Fed's concerns. The S&P Case-Shiller Index, which measures home prices across 20 major cities, rose 19.1% year on year in June, the largest jump in the series' long history going back to 1987. A survey from the Conference Board showed U.S. consumers now see inflation running at 6.8% for 12 months from now. Whoa! That's up a full percentage point from a year ago, or 17.2% on a relative basis. Holy... That is bad, man. That means your milk is going to get expensive. Your cream will go missing, just like mine. We ended up finding cream at a different store, mind you. It's going to be harder and harder to come about what you need. You know what I did? I got chickens. Man, we have too many eggs. We've probably got like 30 eggs right now because we got 6 chickens and a rooster. They lay every day. And they get a lot of their food from foraging, eating bugs and stuff. And now we're responsible for our own eggs. Don't got to buy them anymore. Not that there's a shortage of eggs that I've noticed, but there is a shortage of chicken. And so we're also incubating and raising new baby chickens, and we're going to have our own chickens. Some of them shall be spared the blade, as they are stars of the Chicken City show we're working on. We're building it out. It's just, I'll tell you, my friends, people have said, Tim, where are the new shows? Where's Chicken City? You know what's going on? We're building a new studio, right? I'm talking to my guy who's running this stuff, and I'm like, can you find more workers? He's like, we can't. We can't find more people to work. And I'm like, I get it. I mean, I talk about this stuff all day, every day. So we're supposed to do Chicken City, months ago. We're supposed to have the live events months ago, but there's no one to do the jobs. So we got a handful of guys, good dudes who are doing the work. I appreciate their help. They're rad. And the studio's coming along beautifully. But that means we can't get Chicken City done because these are the only guys we have willing to work. Isn't that amazing? It's hitting everybody across the board. And I'm really worried that we're struggling to expand and we are bursting at the seams trying to. A lot of people don't want jobs. A lot of people don't want the jobs that we have openings for. A lot of people want, email me saying they'll take any job possible. But We have a team of contractors that are local, that are licensed and insured and all that good stuff that are working, and they can't find people to fill these roles. We're hiring the people we can hire, and we're going as fast as we can in that regard because it takes time to vet and do that stuff too. But when it comes to trying to get people on the ground to do the work, it's just harder and harder and harder. So what do? Things are going all right for us down here to a certain extent, and that's because we've left these cities. Certainly, I think life is still good. You can still live. You can still do your thing, right? You can still live and eat food and go to the movies and watch movies. Our standard of living has gone down quite a bit. Harder to get some products, but it's not the apocalypse. We can adapt. We don't need to live like kings 24/7, but we shouldn't accept failure in policy resulting in a lower standard of life. We're supposed to make things better for our kids, not worse. If we're going to keep supporting politicians who make things worse, then I think we're doing wrong by the next generations. I don't have all the answers. I never do. I can only tell you from the look of things, McDonald's hiring 14-year-olds, things are not going well. Democrat voters thinking they are, that's a bad, bad sign. It's tribal politics. Nothing to do with reality. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight, 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.